The theatre stood like a sleeping giant in the middle of the city, its old brick facade soaked in the amber glow of late evening. Posters fluttered on the walls outside, announcing a glamorous upcoming performance, Marilyn Monroe's rehearsal for a new dramatic role, one that demanded long nights under the harsh beams of the stage lights. Inside, the air held a mixture of dust, velvet, and old timber, the kind of scent only agging theatres carried, where every creak of the rafters and every whisper of the curtains told stories older than anyone inside. The stage was dim, except for a single spotlight that cast Marilyn in soft gold as she practiced her movements. There were no reporters tonight. No crowd. No fanfare. Only crew members wandering in the wings, adjusting ropes and lights, yawning as the hour grew later. Marilyn moved with unusual stillness. She let the silence guide her. The empty seats in front of her stretched into the dark like a vast ocean of shadows. Each step she took carried a weight of focus that surprised even the director, who watched her with admiration from the first row. Hours passed. The crew drifted away to get coffee or smoke cigarettes outside. Stagehands stacked props in the back corners of the room, and the director dozed off in his chair, exhausted. Marilyn remained. Her script lay on the floor beside her. She sat at the edge of the stage, swinging her legs gently, letting her heels brush the wooden boards. Her breathing slowed, matching the rhythm of the enormous hollow theatre. Then she heard it. A faint sound from beneath her feet. Too soft to be part of the building's usual creaks. Too deliberate to be an animal. A tiny shift of weight. A small scrape. A careful, nervous movement. Marilyn froze. The theatre was known for its hidden spaces, trapdoors, storage rooms, old performance pits beneath the stage once used for orchestra players decades ago. Most were locked, some had been abandoned. But this sound didn't belong to the building. It belonged to someone inside it. A child. She didn't know how she knew, only that she did. The sound carried a timbre she recognized from times she had visited orphanages, shelters, and quiet corners of studios, where lost children sometimes hid. She leaned forward, placing her palms flat against the stage. Silence. Then another sound. A soft exhale. A trembling inhale. Someone trying not to be heard. Marilyn rose slowly, careful not to alarm whoever might be below. The spotlight above her hummed. The rest of the theatre remained wrapped in shadow. She stepped quietly toward the side of the stage. The wooden boards creaked. She stopped, listening. There, a stifled gasp. She moved toward the trapdoor she knew existed near the center of the stage. It was rarely used now, painted over to match the floor, but Marilyn had memorized its location during rehearsals. She knelt beside it and placed a hand on the cold wood. No movement now. No breath. Whoever hid beneath was holding themselves perfectly still, willing their presence to vanish. Marilyn remained there for several seconds, listening with the focus of a predator, but her intention was not to strike. It was to protect. A faint vibration reached her palm. She knew instantly. A child was below, curled up, afraid to breathe. She lifted her head and glanced around. The director was asleep. The crew was gone. No footsteps echoed through the theatre. For once, the world had grown still enough for a hidden truth to surface. Marilyn looked back at the trapdoor. The boy below didn't dare move. She didn't open it yet. She knew sudden light and sudden noise could terrify a child hiding in darkness. She stood and quietly crossed the stage to the wings, where a single walk light cast a dim orange glow. She unplugged the buzzing spotlight that had been shining on her. The theatre fell into soft evening shadow. When she returned, the darkness made the wooden boards feel colder. Safer. Calmer. She eased herself down beside the trapdoor again. Her fingers traced the edges, not forcing, not prying, simply letting the boy hear that someone was there, but not violent. Then a shift. A frightened, instinctive scoot backward. A shoe brushing old dust. Marilyn's heart tightened. This was no thief. No runaway performer playing tricks. No teenager sneaking inside. These were the movements of a young child. Lost. Scared. Silent. She rose again, stepping carefully toward the backstage corridor. She knew exactly what she needed, a small lantern kept near the technical shelves. She lit it with a match, turning the flame down low to create a warm, steady glow. She carried it back to the trapdoor. Then, without abruptness, she gently lifted the edge with her fingertips. The wood groaned softly. The hinges whispered, and the space below breathed out a cold draft. The lantern illuminated the gap slowly. Dust motes rose into the air. Old ropes and props lay scattered in forgotten corners. And tucked into the darkest shadow, knees pulled to chest, was a small boy. His face was streaked with dirt. His clothes were torn. His hair hung over his eyes, and his tiny hands were clamped over his ears, as if expecting anger or punishment. Marilyn's lungs stopped for a moment. The boy shrank back at the sight of light. His shoulders curled tightly. His breath came in quick, panicked bursts that felt too familiar, the kind she once had as a child when she hid in dark closets to escape the world outside. He tried to push himself deeper into the corner, but there was nowhere left to go. The wooden beams pressed against his back. He trembled violently. Marilyn remained perfectly still. The lantern's glow softened the shadows around him, revealing bruises along his arms, a scraped knee, and a tear in the sleeve of his shirt. He was no older than 7. His eyes darted between the darkness and the lantern, not toward her face, but toward the object that brought light into his hiding place. His pupils tightened. Then something unexpected. He slowly lifted one hand toward the lantern, not to take it, not to shield himself from it, but as if trying to feel its warmth from a distance. He was freezing. Marilyn set the lantern gently on the edge of the stage, allowing the soft flame to cast wider light. The boy stared at it as though seeing something long forgotten. His breathing slowed just a fraction. The theatre around them groaned as the old rafters cooled. The painted backdrop swayed slightly above, its ropes whispering like ghosts. Marilyn reached her hand down toward the boy. Not touching him. Not grabbing him. Just offering. The boy's body tensed, his small frame tightening as though expecting pain. His eyes darted from her hand to the lantern, confused by which one he feared more. A long minute passed. Then another. At last he reached out, trembling, hesitant, and placed his cold, shaking fingertips against Marilyn's palm. Her breath broke quietly. The boy recoiled at his own bravery, pulling his hand back quickly, but the connection had been made. He had allowed himself to touch the safety offered to him. Marilyn leaned closer, her expression softening into a steady, protective calm. She lowered herself until she sat fully on the stage, feet dangling into the dark gap, her posture relaxed, non-threatening. The boy watched her. He shifted his weight carefully, then scooted forward an inch. Then another. He stopped just short of reaching the lantern's warm light. The theatre creaked softly around them as though listening. Marilyn waited, and the boy, after whatever road had brought him into the darkness beneath the stage, seemed to recognize that he was no longer alone. Not tonight. Not while Marilyn sat above the shadowed world he had hidden in. Not while her lantern glowed like a small sun in the silence. Marilyn stayed seated at the edge of the trapdoor, her legs hanging into the old performance pit where the boy curled in the faint warmth of the lantern. The flame flickered softly, painting amber light across the beams and ropes, as if the theatre had momentarily come alive to witness a fragile piece forming in its forgotten heart. The boy's small hands opened and closed repeatedly, an involuntary tremor of anxiety and cold. He watched the lantern as though it were a fragile miracle, a thing both comforting and frightening. His breaths came shallow but less frantic now, as if the warmth soothed the edges of a long-held fear. Marilyn noticed the dirt beneath his fingernails, the bruises on his wrists, and the way his ribs pressed sharply against his shirt. A child who had been running, a child who had been hiding long before he found this place. Above them, footsteps suddenly broke the quiet. Heavy adult hurried. Marilyn didn't flinch, but the boy did. His entire body snapped inward like a frightened animal. He pressed himself against the back wall of the pit so quickly that dust shook loose from the ceiling above him. Marilyn steadied herself, listening. The footsteps didn't belong to the director or any stagehand she knew. They had attention to them, fast, seeking, agitated. They crossed the stage overhead, packing, then stopping near the trapdoor. The boy squeezed his eyes shut. Something in him recognized those footsteps, and feared them. Marilyn shifted her position, instinctively placing her body between the trapdoor opening and the boy below. Her shadow covered him, shielding him from sight. The footsteps moved again, circling, uncertain. Then they retreated toward the backstage corridor, disappearing into the dim labyrinth of ropes, catwalks, and forgotten rooms. The boy cautiously opened his eyes. Marilyn kept her expression calm, the same quiet reassurance she had once wished someone would offer her in dark moments. She studied his reactions. His fear had not left, it had only shifted into wary alertness. Someone had been searching for him, and he had not wanted to be found. Marilyn lowered herself into the pit. Her feet touched the dusty floor and the boy stiffened, unsure. She didn't approach him. Instead, she picked up the lantern and moved it toward the center of the small space so its glow widened. The faint golden light revealed more: torn paper on the floor, footprints in loops, the circular packing of a child trapped in fear, and a single small blanket that looked like it had once been white, but now carried the stains of weeks on the run. She crouched a few feet away, letting the boy observe her. He lifted his gaze toward her face for the first time. His eyes, large and dark, reflected the lantern light. There were questions in them, and exhaustion, and a deep, bone-deep distrust that had taken root long before tonight. Marilyn gently pulled off her coat, a soft, wool-lined evening wrap she had worn during rehearsal. She placed it on the dusty floor between them and nudged it slightly toward him. The boy watched the coat, then her, then the coat again. Slowly, with the caution of a child who had learned never to trust too quickly, he scooted closer and pulled it toward himself. He wrapped it around his shoulders like armor. Marilyn exhaled quietly, relieved. Above them, a metallic clang echoed, someone opening a storage room door too sharply. The boy jolted. Marilyn rose halfway, her head turning sharply toward the sound. Whoever was moving around upstairs seemed to be searching with urgency. Boxes scraped against the wooden floor. A shadow passed across the stage above, swift and determined. Marilyn's expression tightened. She had seen these kinds of searches, the frantic ones, the desperate ones, the wrong ones. She stepped back toward the ladder leading up to the stage and placed one hand on the trapdoor's edge. With deliberate quiet, she lowered it until the thin crack of light disappeared, plunging the pit into a warm, dim amber lit only by the lantern. The boy immediately shrank toward the wall again, but she gently shook her head, reassuring him. Not darkness to trap him, darkness to protect him from whoever hunted above. The muffled footsteps paused at the newly shut trapdoor. The wood creaked under shifting weight. Marilyn held her breath. The boy held his. Silence stretched tight. Then the footsteps moved on. Marilyn didn't open the door immediately. She waited until the sounds faded down the backstage hall, disappearing deeper into the building. Only then did she lift the trapdoor a sliver, letting a thin line of soft light return. The boy stared at her with confusion. Why help him? Why hide him? Why protect him from the adult above? Marilyn recognized that look. She had worn it many times as a child, whenever kindness appeared suddenly in a world that had mostly denied her any. She sat again on the floor beside him. The lantern painted a warm halo around them, softening the cold edges of the underground space. The boy shifted closer, just an inch, nervous but drawn by something he could not name. He wasn't ready to speak. He wasn't ready to trust, but he was beginning to believe he wasn't in danger from her. Marilyn glanced upward again. The building absorbed every sound now, holding its breath around them. The boy, instinctively sensing her vigilance, looked at the ladder too. Whoever had been searching for him was not finished. Marilyn lifted the lantern and walked deeper into the pit. The boy followed cautiously. She examined the old brick wall at the back, running her hand along its uneven surface. At last she found what she suspected might be there, a small maintenance alcove once used by orchestra members decades ago. It was cramped but hidden, a perfect place for a child to slip into. A perfect place for someone to continue hiding, or to be hidden by someone protecting him. Marilyn stepped aside and gestured gently, letting the boy see it was a safer pocket than the open floor. The boy hesitated, not from fear, from disbelief. Someone was giving him a sanctuary instead of dragging him out. He crawled into the alcove slowly. The coat stayed wrapped around him. Marilyn placed the lantern near the entrance, letting the soft glow fill the tight space. Then, just as carefully, she positioned a broken wooden crate in front of the alcove opening, not blocking him entirely, but disguising the space from a casual glance. The boy looked up at her through the tiny gap. His eyes softened. He understood. She wasn't hiding him from the cold anymore. She was hiding him from danger. Marilyn sat back on her heels. The theater above creaked again. A shadow crossed the stage as someone returned. The boy flinched. Marilyn instinctively placed her hand on the crate, steady and sure, a silent promise that she would not let anyone tear him from safety. The footsteps grew louder, more urgent, and Marilyn realized this was no ordinary night beneath the stage. Something darker had brought the boy here, and something dangerous had followed. The footsteps above grew sharper, more aggressive, as though someone was losing patience. A metal beam rang with the force of a fist striking it. The boy curled smaller inside the alcove, gripping Marilyn's coat until his knuckles paled beneath the dirt. Marilyn positioned herself between the crate and the trapdoor again, listening. The person packing above no longer moved like a searcher. They moved like someone hunting. A long, tense silence stretched across the stage. Then the trapdoor handle rattled. Marilyn's entire body tensed. The trapdoor lifted an inch. Light sliced into the pit. Marilyn swiftly reached up and pressed the wooden panel shut again. Not with force, with steady resistance, just enough to make it seem stuck. The person above tried again. A grunt followed, frustrated. The trapdoor slammed back down. The boy's breath hitched audibly. Marilyn glanced toward him, her expression calm but sharpened with resolve. She raised a finger gently. Stay quiet. Stay still. Upstairs, the hunter's footsteps moved swiftly across the stage, then descended the stairs toward the wings. The shifting boards told Marilyn the person was searching every storage area, every darkened corner. They were determined, and they were close to losing control. She needed a plan, and fast. She returned to the boy's hiding place and knelt in front of the crate. The boy watched her with terrified eyes that begged for something impossible, safety in a world that had offered him none. She placed her hand over his for a brief moment, steadying him. Then she removed the lantern from the ground. The flame flickered as though sensing the tension tightening around them. Marilyn turned its brightness low, then carried it up the small ladder into the wings. The boy remained in the alcove, holding his breath as she ascended. Marilyn carefully pushed the trapdoor open, letting the softest whisper of light spill onto the dark stage. The theatre felt colder now, colder in a way no draft could explain. She stepped silently onto the boards, barefoot now. She had removed her shoes to move more quietly. The air around her hummed with the tension of a place that had become a hunting ground. She held the lantern at waist height, letting its tiny flame glow just enough to mislead. She walked toward the opposite side of the stage, moving with deliberate slowness. And then she placed the lantern on the floor, a decoy, a false signal, a trail. She slipped into the curtains, disappearing into darkness. Moments later, footsteps returned, fast, heavy, searching for someone below the stage, but now drawn to the flicker of the lantern. The hunter moved toward it. Marilyn heard the movement from behind the velvet curtains and slipped quietly down the backstage corridor, heart pounding in her chest, but her mind sharp, focused. She reached the maintenance stairs leading to the old dressing rooms beneath the building. Behind her, the hunter kicked something, a prop, a crate, anger rising. Marilyn moved back toward the pit, taking a different stairway used decades ago by musicians. She descended quickly but quietly, returning to the boy before the hunter realized the deception. The boy's eyes widened. She placed a finger to her lips. The distant clatter of footsteps echoed above. The hunter had found the lantern, and was furious. Marilyn moved swiftly now, pushing the crate aside just enough to reach into the alcove. With gentle urgency, she lifted the boy into her arms. His body was light, far too light for a child his age. He clung to her neck, burying his face into her shoulder, trembling. She pulled her coat tighter around him. Footsteps thundered above, racing back toward the trapdoor. Marilyn rushed toward the far end of the pit. The boy's breath came hot and quick against her collarbone. She found the narrow maintenance tunnel she had hoped would still exist, a cramped passage used long ago to access electrical hookups beneath the stage. She squeezed into it, holding the boy securely. The tunnel was barely wide enough. Dust fell from the ceiling as she moved. The hunter above reached the trapdoor. The wood rattled violently. The handle shook, a grunt, a curse muffled by boards and dust. Marilyn kept moving through the dark, her free hand guiding her along the cold brick walls. The tunnel angled downward, leading deeper into the building's forgotten belly. Her breath echoed faintly. The boy's heartbeat thudded against her chest like a survivor's drum. When they finally emerged into an underground utility room, she paused, listening for pursuit. Nothing. The hunter had not found the tunnel. For now, she scanned the room. Old fuse boxes, piles of discarded costumes, a narrow staircase leading up to a locked street door. Marilyn climbed it, the boy wrapped in her coat, his face still hidden. She tried the door. It resisted, swollen from decades without use. She pushed harder. The wood groaned, a crack formed, the boy stiffened. With one final shove, the door burst open slightly, letting in a sliver of cold night air. The boy inhaled sharply as though recognizing freedom by its scent. But Marilyn froze. Light from the street poured in headlights. A car parked beside the theater's side entrance, a man standing near it, watching the building, watching the door, waiting. The boy buried his face deeper into her shoulder. He knew that silhouette. Marilyn stepped back into the dark room silently and closed the door. The man outside didn't appear to notice. Yet, she needed another exit, another path. She moved swiftly back into the tunnel, retracing her steps as she heard distant footsteps above, the hunter searching again, now more desperate. Time was collapsing around them. Marilyn reached the far end of the pit again and slipped back into the corridor beneath the dressing rooms. A narrow window near the ceiling let in faint city light. She climbed onto a dusty table and inspected it. The window latch was rusted, but movable. She pushed, it creaked loudly. She froze. No movement above. She pushed again, the latch snapped, the window opened, cold air rushed in. For the first time the boy lifted his head from her shoulder. He blinked at the night sky beyond the glass, a small rectangle of freedom. Marilyn lifted him through the window first. He crawled into the alley outside, struggling but determined. Then she pulled herself out, landing softly on the pavement beside him. The alley was empty, quiet. The theater's bricks loomed behind them like a giant that had swallowed secrets. Marilyn took the boy's hand, his tiny fingers threaded into hers, clinging. Then a shout from the street, footsteps running toward the alley entrance. Marilyn's heartbeat surged, not fear for herself, fear for him. She lifted the boy into her arms again and ran. Her bare feet slapped the pavement lightly. Her breath formed quick clouds in the freezing air. The boy clung to her coat, burying himself in its warmth. Behind them, the hunter reached the alley mouth, too far away, too slow, too late. Marilyn darted between buildings, moving with a fierce, protective strength no one on a movie set had ever seen. She didn't stop until she reached a crowded avenue, where lights and people and noise formed a natural shield. She slipped into the moving crowd, the boy pressed tightly against her. When she finally glanced over her shoulder, there was no one following. She found a small, discreet doorway, the back entrance to an all-night diner. She sat with the boy in the shadow of the doorway, breathing hard but steady. The boy looked up at her. For the first time, his eyes did not reflect fear, they reflected belief. He lifted a hand and touched her cheek, a silent thank you carved out of exhaustion and relief. Marilyn wrapped her coat around him fully, warming him. In the distance, a siren wailed, swallowing the night. The hunter had lost. The boy was safe. For the first time in a long while, he slept, head resting against Marilyn's heart as the city breathed around them. And Marilyn, holding him in the quiet doorway, kept watch until morning. Because once she pulled someone from the shadows, she never let them fall back into darkness again.